welcome back everyone to Frontlines and Faultlines with Mike Kelly. We're finishing off our conversation this week with the very interesting and wonderful Herb Kelsey, who's really devoted his life to keeping our democracy safe and defending your rights in a challenging world, which is evolving at a rapid rate in terms of the threats we face. So this week we're going to do a deep dive. Herb's going to talk to us about what the nature of that threat is from a technical point of view in this cybersecurity space, and explain to us what this whole zero trust strategy that the US has been pursuing under the Biden administration and carrying over now, what it means for Australia as well going forward. So Herb, what are we facing? Who are these bad guys? What do they want to do? How do they do it? And what's the scale of
We have 30 minutes.
it?
Um, so I mean, we have seen over the last decade a change um, in who's attacking whom. But it starts from nation states that have different interests than our governments have. They can fund and train teams of people uh, to be elite hackers and learn from one another. And then they go after various things. They are going after the disruption of operations of another society. They're attacking critical infrastructure like water or power or things of that nature, or they are seeking information um, to exploit particular technologies so that they don't have to make that investment. And then some are just monetary disruptions or information warfare disruptions. So it's not always nation states. It can be paid actors, but make no mistake, their tradecraft, their approaches to getting into systems, their ability to get into systems has been increasing at a rapid pace, and now starting to be supplemented very well uh, by AI AI systems that are learning rapidly how to exploit the chinks in the armor of various defenses, whether it's an industrial partner or a government partner.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the nature of what we're seeing these days.
Right. So every aspect of government and frankly, every individual's now in the front line, right? So your private data, all of this thing, these sources of information can be weaponized, is I guess the bottom line. And it really is not just about the software and how that operates, but where that all lives. Would that be correct to say?
Yeah, that's correct to say. I think the way that I liken it and is that for quite some time, we have believed that the network is the security perimeter and that things inside the network are what need to be secured. Things outside the network aren't really that critical. Um, we started to learn from a security perspective. We evolved to believing that the device that you were on was your security perimeter. So you saw a lot of things like comply to connect, that the device has to be in a certain security state before you, as a human being, should be able to log on to it and do work. We started hardening those user devices to try and protect the overall infrastructure. We've evolved to understand that, kind of to your point, that the security perimeter is really the human being and that human being's identity, or the identity of who's using the device and the system. And so now we've extended out to understand that we want to do things in a biometric standpoint, so that we're actually identifying the human being instead of the device. One of my pet peeves is, if you send me a text code to my phone, that's not identifying me, that's identifying the phone that I own, and it can be in somebody else's hand. And so, like, we didn't identify me, we identified the device. And so some of the modern security techniques involve identifying the person and making that person's journey through the system very specific, based on, we talked about context last week, about the context of that person. Is this person doing the things that they normally do? Is this person in the location they normally are? I can remember a time when I was working with a bank and they had a breach. This was a bank in Florida in the United States, and they had a breach, and the breach originated in Germany. And I said, how many accounts do you have from Germany? Well, we really don't have any. Well, how many accounts do you have from Germany that, have, millions of dollars of transactions flowing through them? Well, we just told you we don't have any accounts from Germany. So why did you let somebody from Germany attack, get into your system? It's like, can we just kind of have some basic things like maybe multi-million dollar transactions from Europe or are at least scrutinized type of thing? So the context of the person, but the security perimeter really now is the person. Um, and now it's being extended to what we call a non-person entity, like a device or I'm sorry, not a device, but an application programming interface to get into the system, or even a agentic AI model that's trying to do something on your behalf. Um, would be considered a security perimeter as well. And so we have, as security professionals, we have started to extend our understanding to the fact that every individual is, as you say, on the front line and vulnerable and potentially a vulnerability that has to be understood and scrutinized.
Right. So the person and the machine are part of the same equation from a security point of view. And so Herb, zero trust. What the
Yeah.
hell is that? What was the US approach to this, and how rigorous is that? I guess gateway process that the US has imposed on qualifying companies and agencies into that zero trust realm.
Um, so thanks, Mike, for a complex question. Let me take the first part of it and try and explain what zero trust is about. What we typically did with security when we thought of it in terms of securing the network would be like thinking about locking all of the windows and doors on a hotel. That's really what we did. I will give you a contrast. What Zero Trust asks us to do is something that happens to me when I travel all the time, especially from the US outside. So there's this wonderful hotel in Canberra. It's called the Midnight Hotel. It's a Marriott property. Great. I fly in, I go to the front desk. Unlike the US, I have to present my passport to identify myself at the front desk. And that front door has got a lock on it. So I go to the front desk, I give them my passport, I identify myself as a human being to the hotel. They then give me a key card. When I get to the elevator and I go to the key card to use the elevator, I have to use the key card to get to my specific floor. I can't go to every floor. I can go to my floor. So that's another check. Then when I get off of the floor, I go to my hotel room and I put the key card on the hotel on the door, and it opens up for me. If I want further security, there's a safe inside where I can put my valuables. I'm being checked each moment of the journey, not only to the data or the room itself, but also along the way, I'm being validated. Now, people that have additional privileges, like maybe someone who is cleaning the rooms, he or she may have access to more than just that floor. And so they have additional privileges, and their key may open different rooms, but they probably don't open the safe in my room. And so there's this differentiation between who's operating within this environment, and there are periodic checks on who I am as I move through that environment. So if you have that analogy in your mind, then what we've been doing typically with security these days or prior to this is, if you go back to that hotel, the minute you walk through the front door, there are no doors or locks on any other rooms in the whole building. You can just walk in and out of whatever hotel room you want, and you have free reign once you're inside. From a cybersecurity perspective, we call that lateral movement. You're able to go places where you probably shouldn't go, but the way that we've secured systems up until recently has been to simply lock the doors and windows on the hotel and not have any locks on any of the doors on any of the hotel rooms. And candidly, that's probably not a hotel I want to stay at. I don't know about anybody else, but that's really the key. Conceptually, that's really the key difference is that we identify the individual who's doing something in our environment, and then before we let he or she do whatever they want, we validate that we know who they are and that they have permission to do that. In my hotel analogy, floor by floor, room by room. And that's really what zero trust allows us to do. And it's very powerful it's very powerful when you approach it that way because it gives you a lot of opportunities um, to keep mistakes from happening.
Hmm. And it's a really rigorous process, isn't it, that the US government's developed here? A lot of resources have gone into this, and as I understand it, there are two particular dimensions. You've got this red teaming, where or a company, for example, that wants to do business with the US government, have got to open up to a really interventionary, nuts and bolts, belt and braces examination of their business, so that a business can't just say to the government, "Yeah, we meet your criteria." The government goes in and finds out firsthand at the coalface whether or not they can trust them, and then you're also evaluating insider threat at the same time. Is that the way to characterize that? Or?
Yeah, that's the way to characterize it. I think what happened is that, well, I know what happened. So if you kind of look at the trajectory of what the U.S. government was doing with zero trust, there was a lot of impetus to move into the hyperscaler clouds, and the government was putting billions of dollars US into funding that. They got to a particular set of programs that they were putting out to the vendor space. And what they realized was that no matter how well they specified to the systems integrator and the hyperscalers what they wanted from a security perspective, they weren't getting the outcome that they wanted. And so what you see with zero trust starting in 2021 was the US government and their cybersecurity apparatus becoming very prescriptive about what this security architecture would look like. It's based on zero trust, but the key is that they became prescriptive. They said not only do you have to meet this architecture and design to this architecture, but as you said, um, with the mandate to go to zero trust that came out of the president's office, we're going to evaluate and set a bar that you must meet. We're going to evaluate your solution and your environment. We're going to evaluate it, as you said, from a cybersecurity perspective, a red team, but we're also going to evaluate it from a functional and use case perspective, a blue team. And um, when they combine those, purple, they combined them to make the process more efficient and more rigorous. What used to happen was that when you went to evaluate a system in this way, you would do the red team first, and then the blue team would evaluate, and then you'd wait another 6 months and get the red team, and you would just kind of keep leapfrogging. Um, what we underwent, one of the few companies that's done that for our capability, was having them both in the room at the same time.
Right.
So you can think of shoulder angels.
It's a crowded room.
That's not secure enough. That's not functional enough. That's not secure enough. That's not functional enough. And you go back and forth. So yes, it was rigorous, but the real change for the US from a security perspective was the experts in cybersecurity for the US government sitting down and saying, this is how you architect a system. It's not about principles. It's not about um, fanciful ideas, however well formed. It is about this architecture. And once you say that you meet this architecture, we're going to come back and evaluate you rigorously to determine if you met this architecture. And that's a huge change. It is the government being prescriptive about what outcome they want. So I'm just saying a sidebar. I spend a fair amount of time in Australia, and what I see happening is that the work of the Essential Eight is trying to get to that, but it's still set up as a compliance framework where where you're seeing if you set things a certain way, as opposed to a um, a prescriptive architecture. And I just get concerned because we went through that cycle of trying to make sure that things were configured in a certain way, without the rigor, the evaluation rigor, and we fell short. And I've spoken to a number of people about it, and tried to share the lessons learned from the US. But I'm hoping the Essential Eight becomes stronger, and more rigorously evaluated. I think that would do a lot of good. It's a
Right.
great framework. I think it needs some wrapper around it.
Right. So to sum up where we're at the moment, we've got some bad guys out there who have got incredible technical capabilities, who are looking for every angle of attack, every opening. And now US government's saying, hey, anybody who does business with us, we don't trust you. That's what the zero trust means. You've got to prove it. You've got to prove you're secure. You've got to prove that you can do what you do. But also, we're going to prove it. We're going to come in your building. We're going to rip you apart. We're going to see who you've got working for you. We're going to make sure that we can rely on you. And in that sort of environment, what does that mean for coalition contexts? So Australia needing to work so closely with the US, and in particular, you've got Indo-PACOM as a very central partner for us, and we've got Exercise Talisman Sabre this year involving 19 countries. What does this mean for the level of cooperation that we can be involved with the US under zero trust?
So I I, I think that the the way that I understand it, and I really want to personalize it and not trying to express any kind of formal position other than my opinion. What the US is really saying in providing, or in requesting zero trust, not requesting, mandating zero trust written into law, followed by the last administration and the current administration. The assessment of our system was done under the current administration. It has not gone away, despite some of the political, assumptions that people would make. The security of systems has not gone away under this administration. Um, it's a recognition that no matter how strong the core US system is, every partner, whether it's a Five Eyes partner, a coalition partner, or a university or a research partner, or someone in our defense industrial base that supports the US government, is a potential on ramp into um, a potential on ramp for an attacker into the system. And so what I believe is going to happen as the US mandates zero trust, that they're going to extend that out to partners and governments and research facilities, to request that they are zero trust as well. And the United States has built this into its DoD acquisitions, its government acquisitions. As we've talked about, they have a very rigorous process to determine if you're zero trust. You cannot self-proclaim it. Believe me, I wish I could have. Our team was under assault for 60 straight days. Well, 30 days apart, but it's a lot to have nation state level attackers inside your system, trying to expose your vulnerabilities. It's a lot. They're very good. They're very efficient. Um, and it's quite a challenge, but you cannot self-proclaim it. So
Mhm.
I think that one aspect is the the security aspect that zero trust brings. But I think, to your point, when you talk about these joint exercises, um, it's also the controlled information sharing. It's the interoperability. It's the federation of who can see the information. Now, what's nice is that Zero Trust provides for that. Zero Trust allows you to take someone that's not in your organization, agree on certain attributes that you're going to use to filter. Um, the information inside your system and allow for that interoperability. It requires some cooperation between the parties, but if done within guidelines, you can actually interoperate between um, the 19 countries that you stated were part of Talisman Sabre. Now, I was in a session with the intelligence leadership of each of the Five Eyes countries, and the 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 woman from the UK said, Five Eyes, we have to become 50 Eyes in a blink. We have to be able to interoperate with other people, and so I see Zero Trust as the foundation for that secure interoperability, and I see the federated identity as the mechanism for supporting that information sharing, whether it's between countries or it's between governments and their partners. Um, I, you know, I, I just, I just get concerned about some of the ideas about how you can get that done. Um, you know, but that's the mechanism that we have in place,
Right,
and I think that it's an important one to first put your security down and then put your interoperability on top of it. The U.S. has an architecture that they're enforcing, and I believe that that enforcement will lead to partners because if you're not a safe on ramp, if you're not a safe on ramp, you're going to get closed.
right,
If you're not a safe on ramp, you're going to get closed. And, we have some of that happening in the US today. There are universities that are being scrutinized for not properly securing the data that they receive from the government um, from a cybersecurity standpoint. And, they're carrying great risk. And so, there's teeth to it. There's teeth to it.
right,
If you're not a safe on ramp, you're gonna be a closed on ramp, and
right,
I don't think our partners really um, should want that to be the case for themselves.
right. And so, to sum that up, I guess the key thing to transmit here is we've got uh, a period of time now where we need to be deterring our potential threats. And we don't want to go to war. If we don't want to go to war, we need to deter. And that means them understanding that we're secure for a start and we will dominate with our systems without them being able to be degraded or undermined. That we've all got to be on the same team. You mentioned 50 eyes. And that gives you that deterrent volume, that deterrent front that we have to present. We can't really do that unless we meet these zero trust standards. And the other takeaway I would say about that is that's not about letting the US into our systems or giving up sovereignty. It's actually about making our systems stronger against that threat that affects every single individual in our country. And also, we need to be cognizant of that when we're going through the process of evaluating who we get to provide our systems.
Yes, yes, across the board. Adhering to zero trust doesn't let the US into your environment. It's interesting to me because, when you look at the hyperscaler based models, that's letting the US have both technical and um, administrative sovereignty over your data and your systems. And so, for organizations and industries that are looking to be sovereign, to have their data in their environment, in their data in their legal system, and not having another nation state be able to have control over that. Um, I don't know how a global hyperscaler fits into that. Um, but zero trust doesn't let the US into your environment. Um, and it's critical to understand that the attacks that we see have increasingly become asymmetric,
Mhm.
right? And what we mean by that is it's not a clash of strength against strength. It's a clash against low cost, high impact, um, unexpected or unanticipated attacks. That would be an asymmetric attack.
Mhm.
Cyberspace collapses time and space. It allows you to um, sit here. I'm in the U.S. and be able to launch an attack across a network in any foreign country that I might want. It allows attackers to not have to go through the production of a submarine or the production of a tank and get it to the location. That's a very expensive proposition. If I can send a malware packet that disables the tank's ability to interact with its command and control system, I disabled it just as effectively as putting another tank on that battlefield and blowing up the other tank. And so it's not as tangible, but these are the types of attack that have presaged many wars, and these are the types of attack that can let a smaller, less sophisticated um, enemy um, win an interaction without spending anywhere near as much money or time or having to create a standing army. There's really just a dependence that we have on this information domain that I really would urge people to respect as much as possible,
Mhm.
because that's the vulnerability. Um, yeah,
Right. And I think it does boil down to this simple fact that we have this in front of us now. We're facing these attacks now. It's urgent. It plays into the deterrence factor, but we need to be taking serious action to deal with this now. It's something that hasn't, I mean, I know politicians love to stand in front of the shiny toys, the tanks and the planes and whatnot, but really these days, it's this back end story. You can
yeah,
amplify what you have to help you confront a volumetric threat, but it can also become irrelevant pretty quickly if you haven't taken
yes.
care of this side of the story. So our
Absolutely relevant.
right,
Absolutely relevant. I mean, I think of a story, early 2000s, a European Air Force was not able to fly their military planes because they couldn't get the flight plans to the right place. And the reason they couldn't get the flight plans to the right place was that their systems had a vulnerability that was unpatched. It wasn't a zero-day threat. It was a threat that had been known for, over 6 months. And it turned out that the patches were right there in the environment. They just never been applied.
right.
And so here you have an entire Air Force fleet that's unable to fulfill their mission because you didn't patch an underlying information system, and it wasn't an unknown threat, it was a known threat. And so the vulnerability of all of our amazing weaponry across the Western world is still dependent on the ability for someone to make a decision and have that effect transmitted accurately across the information space and the infrastructure that supports it. And an attacker who can interrupt that at any point in the flow, keeps that wonderful shiny weapon from fulfilling its mission.
Right.
It's that simple.
So,
It is dependent on something that we don't see.
yep. And I think people need to also appreciate it's a way of our threat to apply pressure politically as well, not just in the context of a battle space. So I don't think it's any surprise or any coincidence that we have had these amplified cyber attacks here across so many levels of our health, commercial, business, banking, telecommunications. That all really took off after we demonstrated and committed to supporting Ukraine in its war against Russia. And a lot of this stuff emanates from Russian based actors. So it's out there now, it's urgent. I don't think our government and bureaucracy is really taking this seriously enough and acting quickly enough on it. But this is a story that's as old as the Trojan horse and as current as where your current health data's gone. And so, thanks for the work that you've done on this, Herb. I know it was a painful process for you in your current workplace, and I think you're the only ones that have actually managed to crawl through the gateway at this stage. But thank you for all that work, and we're going to be coming back to you to talk to you more about this in the future. We really need to raise consciousness of this and get the alarm bells ringing because it is something that's in our face right now. So thanks so much for this chat, Herb, and look forward to talking to you again soon as well.
Well, Mike, I've enjoyed this thoroughly. Thank you so much. You mentioned the threat. Um, there was a set of defense reviews a couple of years ago, which is why I started spending more time in Australia. My hope was that that would create urgency, but sometimes urgency dissipates, and so I am happy to come back, have a conversation with you anytime, and I appreciate you allowing me the time to answer and interact with you today.
Yeah, well, keep doing what you do, Herb, and keeping the free world safe. And travel safe yourself, mate. I know you move around a lot, so thank you.
Absolutely.
And thanks for being with us, everybody. It's so important that we all appreciate this and that you tell your friends. And I hope that we can really volumize the discussion and the knowledge about this. So please like and subscribe, Faultlines and Frontlines, so that we can actually get that story volumized and that we can also help sustain what we're doing. So we'll see you again next week. And thank you for being with us on Frontlines and Faultlines. Cheers.